Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs. Hey, welcome in. It's the Arrowhead Addict Chiefs pregame show. Patrick Allen here with you. I've brought Adam Best and Arrowhead Addict editor-in-chief Matt Connor along for the ride. Fellas, how you doing?
Good. Ready for a mid-afternoon preseason game on a Saturday.
You're muted, Adam.
Dang it.
It's preseason on the podcast too, you know.
True preseason form. I was going to say that any day you get to see number 15 sling it is a good day, right? Let's just go out there and be surgical and get him off the field. I don't think we've ever done this particular threesome before. Well, trifecta probably is a better way to say that. But
surgical. That was what Olivia Newton-John told us to get, right? Let's get surgical.
Yeah, that was it. All right, so look, Chiefs playing the Lions today. Kind of interesting team to be playing in the preseason. They're explosive on offense. I haven't done any research because it's preseason. So I haven't done any research into what Dan Campbell has said. What about you, Matt Connor? You cover the team on a daily basis. Do you know what the Lions are planning on doing today?
I know. I'm sure they're doing what most teams are doing, which is trying to stay healthy, keeping things vanilla for most teams to, and trying to get the best look at fringe roster players. I even tweeted this. I said, I know it's meaningless, but I don't like the idea of the Lions winning 2 at Arrowhead in 1 calendar year, right? I mean, like even if you win in the preseason after you won last year's week 1, you'd have a little moxie about yourself, I would think. So, I know we don't care about wins or losses today, but there's a part of me that does.
Sure. I mean, look, it's the Chiefs. You want to see the Chiefs win, period. Preseason, yeah. I don't care. And you're right, like, especially because fans of opposing teams, we always have to put up with them when they look for any narrative they can to get one over on the Chiefs, right? And so, we'll have to endure, like, upstart Lions fans being like, hey, the Lions are 2-0 against Patrick Mahomes. They'll start, the Bengals and their whole 3-0 thing. By the way, it's the Arrowhead Addict podcast, the pregame show. We're just going to get you ready for kickoff here. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit the like button. Really casual pregame show today. If you've got any questions, anything you want us to answer, fire off in the chat. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. And then we'll be back for a halftime show and a postgame show, which I think is just going to be me. So good luck with that. But come back. I'll break things down for you as best I can, and we'll go from there. So who are you guys looking forward to seeing in action today on the Chiefs?
Joshua Williams, right? Mm-hmm. I really want him to grab that CB2 spot and kind of announce himself in the next in line, along with guys like Travarius Ward and L'Jarius Sneed, that lineage. I think it's time for Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo to unearth their next gem.
Connor?
Yeah, that's a great entry. I'm looking at a guy like Irv Smith Jr., for whom, I think we know most guys on the roster right now fit into 2 categories. One is roster locks, and the others are, we know we're going to get cut, but we're hoping there's game tape there for the practice squad or for some other team's practice squad. And then there's a few players right in the middle, where it's like really could go either way. Could the Chiefs keep 4 tight ends? Will they keep 4 running backs? Will they keep 7 wide receivers? Will they keep 10 offensive linemen, 11? And I think some of these guys could make their own case with really strong showings. With Travis Kelce needing probably more rest this year than ever, with Jared Wiley probably going to make some rookie mistakes, it wouldn't, I think Irv Smith has to look at today and go, if I'm not flexing at the end of this game somehow, if I'm not showing up midway with the cameras on me after a big play, I'm done. And I wonder what that's going to do for him, because I like what multiple tight end sets could do for the Chiefs offense this year.
Boy, I did not see us having an Irv Smith conversation today. No, but you know what? Like, he's one of those guys. He's incredibly talented athletically. And I was always waiting for him to catch on when he was in Minnesota, at least as a fantasy player. And it just never happened. You'd see a play or highlight every once in a while and be like, man, Irv Smith. And I was convinced. I was an Irv Smith truther last year. When he went to the Bengals, I was like, he's going to be incredible. And nothing. They wanted nothing to do with him. And I don't even think he's going to make the Chiefs roster.
You never know with these tight ends. They take a long time to develop. I'm not saying this is going to happen with Irv Smith, but we've seen players like David Njoku, Jared Cook take a long time to finally pop. Could be the case. Let's hope he at least shows out enough to make the team. I'm trying to think who else I'm looking at. I'm looking at Wanye Morris today. Possibly a preview of the future at right tackle. Can he become a good enough player that they potentially back out of that Juwan Taylor contract, that massive contract? They owe him a ton of money. That's a huge cap hit. They have to be very careful where they allocate money with some superstars on the roster.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And I was just thinking about, in this game, there's something to watch, which is, how do the Chiefs approach offense in this game because of some of the injury issues that they're dealing with right now, right? So the fact that you're going to have Wanye in there, the fact that you're going to have no Hollywood Brown, this is the game which probably would have traditionally been the third preseason game, right? At least this is the way the Chiefs handled it last year. Last year, in the second preseason game of the season, that's when the starters played the most. And then the third game, they were out. They didn't play in that game at all. So this is essentially, probably, if things repeat themselves, the dress rehearsal game. And I'm sure that in this game, Andy on offense would have liked to try to get a couple little things going, just test out a couple little things with his new receivers, with Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, everybody out there. Now you're not going to have Hollywood Brown out there because he's injured. So it sort of flips the plan for the Chiefs. And it's kind of, I guess it's kind of, no injuries, or you never want an injury to happen. But if it's one like this is going to happen, best for it to happen in that first preseason game as opposed to the last preseason game, or late in, right before the season starts, where you have to scramble and figure out, okay, like, we thought we had this on offense. Now we've got to reconfigure things. What do you see from Justin Watson in this game? How do they play him? What other receivers sneak in there? And then how do they use Xavier Worthy? Because it might be different than they were going to use Xavier Worthy with Hollywood Brown on the field. So I would kind of keep an eye on those two players on the offensive side of the ball to see what exactly they're trying to do with them.
The Hollywood Brown injury really complicates things, because before you could ease him into the offense, Xavier Worthy into the offense, and then use him as returner. Now that dynamism at returner, you can't, because he's now your primary downfield threat, and you're relying more on him early. So it changes even the makeup of, now do you keep Nico around, right, for returns, where maybe you weren't going to before with Brown. Like, even that injury changes the question of who could make the initial roster. Remember, after Hollywood comes back, we may see the roster as they intended to keep it. These moves through weeks 1 and 2 are just going to be something to watch there. There's going to be a lot of pieces shuffling around. What about running back, you guys? We're not talking about Carson Steele. We're not talking about Deneric Prince. Like, what are you looking for today there?
Give me some more Carson Steele, man. I just want to see more out of this guy. I'm not saying that during the season I want Carson Steele to be getting a significant number of carries if he indeed does make the team. But when you have a guy that goes out there and has a run like he had, you gotta get a little bit more of that, because that's a dimension that Isaiah Pacheco runs really hard, but he doesn't run like that guy. And I'm like, so is that a dimension that the Chiefs want to have in reserve in the regular season? And I think if they do, then they're going to give Carson Steele some run. And we saw it. We talked about this on the post-game show after the first preseason game. When they got down there into the red zone, they had Carson Steele in there. And that was like a little bit of maybe a breadcrumb or a clue to, do they want to have a little bit more of a power run game, and how do they want to go about it? And perhaps Carson Steele is that guy, short yardage, goal line. What do you think, Adam?
Oh, I think fantasy owners are jumping off bridges. If you have Pacheco on your team, that's a vulture story right there. You don't want that, but it could be good for the Chiefs, because you don't want Patrick Mahomes sneaking. Isaiah Pacheco has been banged up both of his 2 seasons so far. Got to keep him fresh to carry the load in the playoffs. Yeah, I like Carson Steele. I think if you look at some of the best teams in the league, 49ers, the Ravens, etc., they have fullbacks, right? I know it's out of fashion, not fashionable for a lot of the league, but the best teams still utilize fullbacks. And with the Beldozer no longer here, I think a guy like Carson Steele could be even more vital to get him going and get him integrated. It just gives you another look, makes you more multiple. So Deneric Prince, not sold yet. We've been through the song and dance with this kind of player before. They usually don't work out. I hope for his sake that he does, but I'm pretty worried about this RB2 slot, because Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think he's a hard worker. I think he's a good kid, knows the playbook. He's an RB3. That's what he is at this point. Forget the draft stock, forget all that. He's an RB3. He's a guy that you don't want to give more than a few touches a game, maybe a little pass pro. So I'm not even sure the RB2 is on the roster right now. How about you guys?
Totally. I said that last week. I said my prediction for the final roster is we're going to see 2 openings, even after the Chiefs, I believe, will cut 2 more guys than fans think they will need. And one of those will be to import an extra running back, because I don't think a major running back's on the roster because of what you talked about. And also, no one's talking about the fact that Clyde is on a 1-year cheap deal. And he himself is saying, I throw up all the time. I've got physical issues. If you can't count on a guy like that to stay healthy, which he hasn't in the past, he's admitting there's still ongoing issues. You personally root for a guy like that. But if you're forming a roster and you're talking about RB3 or 4, you don't keep that kind of guy around when he doesn't cost you to get rid of it. So I think there's a running back incoming. I also think, and I would love your take on this, Patrick and Adam, I think the other guy is a defensive end. The Chiefs were interested in Manny Ogba, and they didn't get him. You've got Omenihu out. You've got B.J. Thompson, who knows where, but we hope he's healing up from having a seizure and undergoing cardiac arrest earlier this offseason. You've got Truman Jones and Malik Herring. What's your pass rush ceiling there? Right now, coming into a season, are you really going to go that thin outside? I think you keep Malik Herring or Truman Jones as DE5, which means we're missing DE3 or 4 somewhere. After Mike Dana, after Karlaftis, after Anyudike Uzomah. So I think there's room for 2 guys to come in. Is that wacky or is that not?
No, you nailed it. Because if you look at past behavior, if you study the Chiefs' past behavior, who have they brought in late in the game? They brought in Melvin Ingram. They brought in T. Sizzle. They brought in Shady McCoy,
Carlos
and Le'Veon
Dunlap.
Bell, Carlos Dunlap. These are the positions that they bring in late. And also, probably more importantly, these are the positions where free agents become available both at cut day and the trade deadline. So I would expect them to add somebody at both these positions.
Yeah, and when you were running through that list of names, I kept thinking to myself, like, oh, so many of those guys were signed during the season or acquired during the season. So that's really fascinating to see if Brett Veach tries to address it now or he waits, sees what he has. Who do you think are, as we're watching this roster today, a guy like McCole Hardman's got to be thanking his lucky stars for the Hollywood Brown injury, because he's floating around there on the roster bubble, and now he's pretty much guaranteed to make the roster. I think he might have anyway, but he and Nico Remigio, the Chiefs might have said, hey, you know what? We know what McCole Hardman is. We think this other guy might have more upside. We're going to go with him. And then all of a sudden he finds himself on the outside looking in. But then there's other people like Sky Moore, who, it's very telling, right? Hollywood Brown gets injured and Andy Reid's like, yeah, it's Justin Watson. He's not even mentioning Sky Moore. Are there some potential trade candidates still on this roster? And of course, when we're talking trade candidates, we're talking, hey, we're probably going to have to cut this guy, but we would rather not because we think he has some value. Anybody want him? We saw it with Amir Smith-Marset last year. Flashed really well in the preseason, looked good. Chiefs, if they've got anybody like that they think has some value, Brett Veach is going to dangle them to other teams to see if they want to, throw a conditional 7th-round pick, guarantee that they get him. Is there anybody on the roster right now that you think could be traded for some, back-end draft capital or a swap, the old change of scenery swap?
The old 6th for a 7th kind of deal?
Yeah, like my wife was just talking the other day and she was like, oh, like maybe Channing Tatum, I can trade you, like just do a change of scenery swap. And I don't know if she's going to be able to pull that one off, but we'll see how it all plays out.
Kadarius Toney for another team's problem child, maybe?
Oh God, I don't know that you're getting. The Chiefs might have to pay somebody to take Kadarius Toney off their hands.
Yeah, it's rare to hear Andy Reid and coaches go after someone like they've gone after him. And it feels like you don't do that if you really expect that guy to stick around. It feels like they're mad at not being able to get him to play, to display what he could do, to maybe draw in a trade interest there. I just can't imagine what they're really doing. I think everyone knows that writing's on the wall. I think a defensive back could be flipped. You're loaded at defensive back. You can't keep, you just brought up Josh Williams and Jalen Watson, but the Chiefs have thrown Najee Johnson in that trio. It's really not a duo, but kind of a trio fighting for the other boundary corner spot opposite him with Chamari Connor in the middle. And then you've got Nick Jones, who has lived in the middle when spelling Connor second team. And then there's Keith Taylor and Kelvin Joseph, who are like brand new to the mix coming in. And that's not even this year's 6th-round pick, Kamal Hadden. I think one of those guys could be flipped. Maybe a Taylor or like one of these. There's another guy, Christian Roland Wallace, who's kind of like been making plays special teams wise. Dave Tobe loves him. There's a lot of guys that I think Chiefs fans would be like, who's that? That the Chiefs actually really love. And there's really too many. So I think teams are waiting to poach. And when you're in that position, I think you can grab that like late 7th-round pick.
Do Watson and Reed being banged up, does that maybe prevent them from being able to maneuver a little bit?
I still think you have one body too many there, right? Reed's back, right? Like Justin Reed's coming back and looking good. It'll be interesting. I don't know how they sort it out, because it's also true that none of them have stepped up in some sort of Snead way to like seize that op. And with like, let's say Najee Johnson's been injured every year. I mean, how much do you rely on him if you keep him, but everyone loves him? Yeah, it's an odd scenario.
Let me ask you guys a question.
Go ahead.
Do you think this is going to be a situation like last year with the receivers, where they wanted to have definitive decisions made before the season started, but nobody separated themselves, and they're just going to have to go in the season rotating Watson, Johnson, and Williams until one of them separates from the pack a little bit, just because we don't have a clear answer as of now?
It's really possible, man. It's messy. Like, you've got, it should be noted here that they've got Chamari Connor listed as a cornerback, and you've got the emergence of Jaden Hicks as well. So, and then you've got other guys on the roster who have been hanging around. Boydo, right? Then you watch the preseason game last week, and who's out there like playing snaps with the starters? Keith Taylor, who on the depth chart, the unofficial depth chart, is all the way in the back. So like, what is it? What are they doing? Is Keith Taylor a guy they believe in? They wanted to get a little quick look at. Is Is he somebody that they think is maybe has some interest, and so they might try to dangle him for a trade later? So that's why he was like, I have no clue what their plan is. But when I look at this lineup of players, like other than like Kelvin Joseph, I could see him going a million different ways with this group.
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell. Yeah, who knows? But if I was another team, and I needed help in the secondary, I would just be sitting outside Arrowhead waiting to be claiming someone, whoever it is, would be an upgrade,
Yeah, picking up Dave Merritt's garbage is probably better than what a lot of teams have, right?
Yeah. You remember when John Dorsey was GM, the Chiefs had the first waiver claim. They picked up Ron Parker, like let go from Seattle in that kind of move. They picked up a few guys in that moment. And I think the Chiefs will have like one or two of those guys out of the secondary that you could claim and actually give prime time to.
Interesting comment here from Mason Wright in the chat. He says, we're absolutely not loaded at DB. It's the wide receiver situation from last year. I don't know if I agree with that. History says the Chiefs are not great at developing wide receivers. This current iteration of the Chiefs, they haven't like nailed it just yet, but history says they know DBs and they can bring. So just because for whatever reason, they haven't landed on exactly who that person is, at least as far as we can tell, these guys are all probably pretty capable. And I bet more than one of them are capable at performing at a similar level in this system. So whoever they do decide to go with, I don't think we're going to have what was his name? Like Marcus Cooper. Remember Marcus Cooper was like good for like two games. And then you realize like was not actually good. I don't think that's what's going to happen with this group where it's like, oh, they roll out Watson and then it's not him. And then it's somebody else. I think they'll perform. It's just a matter of sorting it out.
Well, we haven't even mentioned Trent McDuffie yet, and he's a top 50 player in the entire league. So you don't have to worry about him at all. Chamari Connor looks like a stud, looks like the next really good slot, and he has safety versatility. And you've got three safeties who definitely bring something to the table that aren't Connor. So that's a lot of depth. Really, we're just worrying about CB3, 4, CB2. I mean, I guess CB2,
but these aren't cast-offs. These are like all these guys, like Jalen Watson's second game, he had the pick 6 for 99 yards to win the game against the Chargers. All these guys have started games. All these guys are pro ready. It's not like we're talking about do they make the roster or not. We're just saying, will they make the leap like Charvarius Ward did, like L'Jarius Sneed did? And remember, we didn't know this about L'Jarius Sneed until he was forced to start week 1. There was a suspension. Brashad Breeland, suddenly he comes in and then he gets an interception in his first. Sneed had an interception in his first like few games, right? Like he had I think his first 2, 3, 4 games. So suddenly everyone was like, whoa, who's this playmaker? What a gem in the 4th round. I mean, some of these guys are going to take off because they're forced in there. Competition kicks in, instincts happen, and the game comes to them. So, yeah, I'm not remotely worried about the Chiefs secondary compared to like the wide receiver room like last year.
I'll tell you a little bit of a wild card I'm going to be looking at in this game where I think we'll get to see them a lot is Matt Araiza. I was not like overly impressed with what he did last week based on the hype around his big leg and all that stuff. He did have a couple punts inside the 20, I believe, but look, it's been a minute, right, since this guy's been out there in that kind of situation, given the off the field stuff that kind of derailed his career for a little while. So now that he's back, I would love to see him just blast a couple, because this was when the Chiefs signed him, I thought this was could be a really game changing pickup for them. Whereas some people are like, it's a punter, who cares? The Chiefs don't have to punt a lot. And if you can get an edge in field position, if the Chiefs get backed up on their 5-yard line, 10-yard line, and this guy can boot it 80 yards and flip the field position for them with this defense, it's just one more little edge that they have over teams that need every little edge they can get to just even hang in the game with this team. You guys think he's Is he overhyped? Is he going to get it together?
I don't know. But if your nickname is Punt God, you can't be mad that expectations are high. You got to live up to that moniker. So
That's fair.
But I think you had a pretty good point there that he is rusty. It's been a while since he's played. He kind of basically took a year off, as I understand it. So I agree with you. Like any edge the Chiefs can get, the Chiefs don't really need special teams edges because they're really maybe the only team, along with, I guess, San Francisco, perhaps the Ravens again, that have top 5 offenses and defenses, right? So if they can get edges in special teams, that makes them even more dangerous.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you guys about this just real quick. Watching the game early last week, one of the things I was most excited about coming into this year was Leo Chenal, right? He looked so incredible in the postseason, like he was ready for more. Just such a playmaker in those last couple of games in the postseason run. Then early on, it wasn't much. The sample size was not much, but Chenal really struggled last week. With what little, couple dropping into coverage, and it was clearly overmatched. There was a special teams gaffe. Maybe he was blocked in the back. But I'm looking at that thinking, did we see Chenal blossom because the Chiefs had the linebacker talent and depth to cover over his mistakes so he could flourish in a limited role? And then we let Willie Gay go for it was kind of a song. The Chiefs could have afforded 1 year, $5 million. They could have afforded to keep Gay. They didn't. We knew they wouldn't, so that's fine. I know it's a small sample size, but one of the things I'm looking for today is I'd like to see Chenal look more the part of, hey, you look like you're ready for more. Are you ready for more? Because if he's not ready for more, I've got some real concerns given health concerns with Nick Bolton and other places.
I think it's a great observation. I think if the Chiefs thought that was the case, that Willie Gay was covering up for him, they would have much more seriously looked at Willie Gay. Sure. If that's if that's the case, then they really mismanaged the situation, and with their evaluation of Leo Chenal. I think what we'll see today from the defense is, I'm not saying that they're going to have a full blown game plan and traditional, everybody wants to go into the season with a good taste in their mouth, if possible, right? So if the Chiefs go out there and go 3 and out a couple of times, Andy might keep the starters in longer. He wants them to go get a nice little touchdown drive and head into the season. I think it's the same thing for the defense. It was not a great showing for them against the Jaguars. Now, you can say all the things you want about whether or not they actually had any kind of game plan. They were just doing vanilla stuff. Jaguars are trying harder, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, Steve Spagnuolo didn't like seeing a lot of those plays. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he turns it up just a little bit, just to kind of get everybody a little bit of swagger heading into the season, because this is a unit that has lost a couple guys, but was a top unit last year. Incredible variance with defenses from year to year. So it would be good to make sure that they're confident, because I think that can kind of set the tone, especially for a defense for a season. You start off and you're kind of crappy, and it can be difficult to recover. And so get out of the gate fast, go out there, show that you're still the same defense from last year. I think we'll see a little bit more from them in this preseason game. What do you think, Adam?
On Chenal specifically, I think he is kind of a specialist, and he's a very good specialist. But I kind of say, for all you chess players out there, he's a rook. He goes, straight forward into the side. He's not a bishop. He can't go diagonally and drop back into coverage. It's just not athletically how he works. If you need him to be a run plugger, or if you want to put him down on the line as a de facto defensive lineman, like a kind of stand-up edge, Melvin Ingram-esque, he can do those things, but I don't want him dropping back into coverage, really. I think that's what Drew Tranquill is for. Drew Tranquill is the guy that's going to be your coverage ace. He is going to be a blitzer. He's going to be kind of almost like a bigger safety out there. So I think you use them situationally, with Nick Bolton kind of being the linchpin, the guy that can do a little bit of everything and commands the defense.
So we're just a couple minutes away from game time here. I say keep an eye on Hendon Hooker in this game, quarterback for the Lions. Looks like he's going to play. I just think he's an interesting prospect, and he's a good scrimmage quarterback to go up against. Might try to run a little bit. You know, the Chiefs are going to have to deal with Lamar Jackson in that first game of the season. So I don't even know. Hooker may get the start. I don't know if Goff's going to be out there. So just kind of keep an eye on that matchup versus the Chiefs defense. If he's out there with the Chiefs ones, could be a good little test run for them ahead of Thursday night to start the season. All right, everybody, we're going to get out of here. Hit that like button. Make sure you turn on notifications. I'll be back here with you at halftime and after the game to break down the action that we saw. Special thanks to Adam Best, the blog father and editor-in-chief of Arrowhead Addict, Matt Connor. Make sure you're over on arrowheadaddict.com to get the analysis and all the fallout from the game. If you want to become a member of the Arrowhead Addict podcast community, check out the link in the description. We'll be watching the game in the private Discord with our members, breaking things down there as well. All right, everybody, shout out to producer Richard for getting us up and running. We'll see you guys at halftime. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.